Okay, grade 7, this is your circle geometry review number 1. These are your basic questions you have to be able to do. These are the first 9. There's a second video with more complex questions that you can watch after this one. But right now, if you want to try these 9 questions, press pause on the video, give these a go, and then press unpause, and I'll explain how to do each of these questions. All right, your first question is this one here, and it says, given the fact that it appears that the diameter is 12 meters, this x right here says really, what is the radius? And we learned that if you take a diameter and cut it in half, you will get a radius. So half of a diameter is a radius. And we know that because if this is half of the diameter, that's also the radius. And the radius is a measurement from the middle of a circle to the outside of a circle. So if the diameter is 12, then x must be 6 meters. The radius must be 6 meters. The second question, it gives you the diameter of a circle and says, what is the circumference? And the formula for circumference, we learned that our circumference is pi multiplied by the diameter. If you take pi and you multiply it by the diameter, you will approximate the circumference of a circle. So the circumference, if I substitute 3, because that's approximately what pi is, or 3.14 if you want to, or 3.141592, depending on how accurate you want to be, just use a different pi. Pi is 3 multiplied by the diameter, which is 10. So therefore, the approximate circumference, and we can use those symbols, is approximately 30 meters. So the diameter across here is 10 meters. That means the distance around the circle, or the circumference, is approximately 3 times that diameter, or 30 meters. Okay. The third question is almost the exact same thing, except this time instead of the diameter, you're given the radius, which means the first step you got to do is kind of double that. So the radius was, I'll do it a different way. If the radius was 4 meters, then the diameter would be double that, which is 8 meters. Same formula, circumference equals pi multiplied by the diameter, or 3 multiplied by the diameter, which is 8, or approximately 24 meters would be the circumference. Okay. So if the radius is 4 meters, then the distance around the circle would be approximately 24 meters, or pi times its diameter. The third question, you're given a radius, and you're asked to calculate the area of a circle. So again, we're using formula use here. Area of a circle is equal to pi multiplied by the radius squared. So there's actually, I'm going to do it the formula 4 different ways. The actual formula is 8 and pi r squared. That's the actual formula. But what this really means is pi multiplied by the radius times the radius. Because r squared really means r times r. R multiplied by itself, whatever the radius is, times itself. Some people think it means r times 2, but that's not correct. That's actually the diameter. R squared means r times itself. And in bed mass, this E that we've never learned before because we're only grade 7 stands for exponents. So before you do division or multiplication, you have to do exponents, and that's what this thing is up here. So the reason why I put it in brackets is to remind ourselves that I have to square the radius first, and then I multiply it by pi. Okay? So in this case, if I write down pi r squared and I substitute everything I know pi is going to be 3, I know the radius is going to be 10, and I'm going to square that. So when I substitute all of the information into my formula, pi r squared, I get 3 times 10 squared. I have to do exponents first before I do this multiplication. So I'm going to have 3 times whatever 10 squared is. And since 10 squared means 10 multiplied by itself, that's going to be 100. Which means the area is going to be approximately 300 meters squared. Okay, 300 meters squared. In the second question, it's a variation. This time I'm not given the radius, I'm given the diameter, which means the first thing you have to infer is that if the diameter is 12, then the radius must have been 6. Okay? Same formula, pi multiplied by the radius squared. Pi multiplied by the radius squared will be pi multiplied by 36. 6 squared is not 12. 6 squared is 36. And once you multiply those out, you'll get 108 meters squared for your area. Your next question says, given the circumference of 24 meters, I'm telling you that the circumference is 24 meters, what is its diameter if its circumference is 24 meters? So this time I'm going to write that formula, circumference equals pi times diameter. First thing you always do for every question on the test is use your formula. Don't just give me an answer without a formula. All questions should be answered with a formula. The circumference I know, it's 24, because it's given to me right here. Pi I know, which is 3. And the diameter, I don't know because the diameter is x. So when I substitute everything I know into the formula, I end up with a one-step algebraic equation saying 24 equals 3x. And we know from our experience with algebra that if I have a coefficient, if I divide both sides by that coefficient, I will isolate the variable. And 24 divided by 3 is 8, which means the diameter of this circle must be 8 meters, approximately 8 meters, because 8 times 3 is the circumference of 24. Okay? Same question in the next one, except this time I'm not looking for the diameter, I'm looking for the radius. But before I get there, I'm actually going to find the diameter first. So circumference equals pi times diameter is your formula. The circumference is given, it's 30. Pi we know to be 3. And the diameter we don't know, so I'm going to put d down there. I'm going to divide both sides by 3 to isolate the diameter. And once I know that the diameter is 10, the only other thing I have to do once I know the diameter is 10 is just say, well, what's the radius then? If the diameter is 10, the radius must be 5 meters, half of the diameter. Your next question gives you an area of 75 meters squared. Now these are a little bit advanced. These are kind of hard because you don't learn about square roots until grade 8, but we're going to go over it anyway. So we know that the formula is area equals pi r squared. Okay, that's my formula for the area of a circle. Since I know that the area is 75 meters, and I know that pi is 3, I really know this here. Okay? So I know that 75 must equal pi times the radius squared. I don't know the radius, but I know it's radius squared. So if I think of this 3 as a coefficient, if I divide both sides by 3, I get that r squared must be equal to 25. Okay? Since 75 equals 3 times the radius squared, then 25 must equal the radius squared, because I'm just using basic algebra sense. And if I ask myself what number times itself is 25, if I say what number times itself is 25, I know that that r must be 5. Right? I don't divide it in half and get 12.5. I have to ask myself what number times itself is 25. So therefore, the radius must have been 5 meters. Okay? Not so hard. A little bit of thinking going on. And the exact same thing happens here. I write my formula, area equals pi r squared. Area equals pi r squared. So what's the first thing I'm going to do to both sides to isolate the variable? I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Since I know the area to be here and I know pi to be there, dividing both sides by this 3 will tell me that the radius squared must have been equal to 100. Okay? So what number multiplied by itself is 100? That means the radius must have been 10. So the radius must have been 10 meters, but that's not the answer to the question. If the radius was 10 meters, then the diameter, meaning this x, must be twice that, which means the diameter must be 20 meters.